Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 37 of Floating Through Film. I'm one of your hosts, Dany, and this week we finish our series on my pick, Dziga Vertov, with actually two movies that he didn't direct, but two movies that I think are at least inspired by this kind of filmmaking, this kind of attitude towards film, etc., etc. Um, and those movies are If I Had Four Dromedaries, or If I Had Four Camels in English, and then Mati Manas, or Mind of Clay in English. So let me introduce our co-hosts here, Blake.
What's up?
And Luke.
Hi.
All right, so let's get started. I think I wanted to kind of conclude Vertov first before we actually get into the movies. And I said, and I'm glad I remembered because I said I was going to ask you when we first started the series, like I wanted you guys to kind of keep the question of what is a documentary in your mind, to see if you guys if it would change for you at all watching through Vertov, or if it just made you think about it anymore. So, who wants to go first? When I bring this up,
I'll go.
Okay, what are you thinking? What comes to mind?
I mean, in the first episode, I didn't know that documentary could be, fictionalized in this sense. But watching these movies, it just kind of is making me more aware of this kind of genre. I didn't think of these types of more experimental documentaries as a genre in itself, but watching Vertov and his influences has really made me aware of that. It makes me maybe want to check out more.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you said. And it's more even like people like Apachapong were aside the cool, where it's not documentary, but feels like a documentary. Like that's what he's also done. Like that itself might not be documentary, but it feels so much like it is. I don't know.
It feels real.
Yeah, it feels
and that
real.
can be documentary almost,
Yeah. And that's kind of what I guess I think too. Like it definitely expand my views on what a documentary can be. But
okay. Because so the way I'm going to conclude is kind of maybe go through maybe how Vertov's career has, or his view in cinema history, or just how he's been more influential throughout time. So not Jordan Hicks. I forgot his first name. Anyway, the book I've been reading, Jeremy Hicks. Yes, I'm glad you remember that. By the Defining Dziga Vertov. I kind of have some major points that he points out to the book that I kind of want to go over. And the first one that I had was basically early on in kind of film history, when people looked back at Dziga Vertov and they saw him as a documentary filmmaker, they didn't see him as objective, right? So they basically, he was kind of dismissed, as he says, Vertov lacked a sort of objectivity that you would think of in a normal documentary. And Jeremy Hicks makes the point that Vertov never made this claim that he was objective, right?
Yeah.
And so for a lot of people that saw documentaries as objective things, basically there's a contradiction there, right? How can you not be a non-objective documentary filmmaker? I think over the course of this, we've basically seen how, you're still recording live events, you're still recording real things, but you're still using them in your own way, your personal way, almost, right? Yeah. And we're gonna obviously see that with these two movies coming out.
Yeah. As we said, at the start of the series, people think that of Vertov because he is Soviet. But everyone in the West that's a documentary filmmaker also is biased. We did say that in our first episode too. There's no such thing really as an unbiased documentary, because someone is always going to be putting their own ideas into it, no matter what. It's just based on even what they're filming, what they're choosing to film.
And so then he's almost making it more obvious. And
he's making it obvious.
Yes.
A lot of documentarians don't even think that they're biased, but they probably do. They probably know deep down, but
yeah.
No, they.
But they don't want other people to think that. Is the thing.
They don't want to make it obvious.
Yeah, they don't want to make it obvious.
Yeah.
That's why I respect Vertov so much, because he's just I don't give a shit. I'm a Soviet. I'm gonna throw this in your face.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Show you
he's
why.
Not even
basically,
trying to, that's not what a documentary is to him.
Yeah.
Right. It's still showing it's just showing the world in a new way.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
It's showing. It's almost like Dziga Vertov's world. And
in my opinion, this is almost kind of drawing to how I see the world in general. But there will be people that disagree with this. But in my opinion, there really is no such thing as, especially for one human being, to have an objective view of things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Every time something comes into your eyes and your brain, it's filtering through whatever you think of the world already. Right. There's already preconceived notions there.
Yeah.
And that's what Vertov is, right? He already obviously has these preconceived notions. He's just making them more obvious. He's making them poetic. He's not even directly saying things, which is also what I like about him. which I think kind of makes him more documentary-like, at least, is that he's not. You could describe them as propaganda, but they're still not as direct in your face. You know, it is more about the experience of the film itself, more than just being like you're trying to get a lesson out of it. You know, where you can remember some key points of this is why the Soviet Union is good, and you'll still get that out of it, but it's more about the experience of the film too, right? It is like a song. It is trying to make a song. He is trying to make a painting, that kind of thing, right? Just its own value, and I think that's where a lot of people don't see what documentary is, right? They don't think it can be art, and that kind of gets to my next point here is, I don't know if you guys have heard of John Grierson. He's like one of the early documentary filmmakers, like 20s and 30s, like era, like Vertov's era. Like he's known as like really popular with Flaherty, Robert Flaherty.
Oh, okay,
you know?
Yeah.
Like that kind of. He was in that era.
Was Robert Flaherty the cabinet doctor Caligari?
No, he made like Nanook of the North.
Oh, okay.
You know,
okay.
those kind of documentaries. I'm forgetting some of the other ones. I don't know that much about that era, but like they were known more in this kind of almost the opposite aspect of Vertov. And like I kind of want to read this what Jordan Hicks. Jeremy Hicks. I don't know why I keep doing that. I have no idea why. But Jeremy
Is
Hicks.
Jordan Hicks a real person too?
Jordan Hicks, is he the baseball player?
Is he?
I don't even know. I think I've heard the name.
I don't know why I keep doing that.
I don't know why you do that.
But anyway, apparently, because Grierson, the reason why I bring him up is because Grierson didn't like Vertov's type of documentaries, and it's interesting. The reason why he said is because, quote, there's no story, no dramatic structure, and obviously, like he said, and that's why he said basically Vertov's films were all record and no art, because they didn't have this kind of dramatic story to it, right? You know, this, even like in the North,
they do though.
They don't have a story.
That's the story of the Soviet Union.
Okay,
if you think of it like that,
that's
what I was saying.
But it's not a story like there's a character going through an event or there's
I mean, this is why.
There's themes of the movie. You're talking about a theme, though.
I kind of want to save it for like what one of my points is for like why I like Four Dromedaries so much. But like one reason why I consider this like Vertov, like he is like the greater story is he's telling the story of Moscow and like just the people of Russia. You know, like I don't know, like it is kind of a theme, but it's not. I don't know. He's in each movie. He's definitely like I don't know. I just disagree with the point kind of.
I'll say that there's no central thing where you're following through the movie.
Unless you consider
the theme itself, right?
Yeah.
But there's no character, there's no like idea where it's like carrying you through it.
Yeah. Know? But yeah. That's why I disagree with the point.
I haven't even seen Nanook of the North, I don't think. But think about that movie. Like that movie has kind of a story to it where it's showing this it's trying to make this Eskimo exciting through the film, right? But it is kind of trying to have dramatic tension in it. And this one, to me, Vertov's movies don't really have like dramatic tension. You know, there's I don't know. There's
definitely. I feel like there's tension in Man of the Movie Camera at some points, but I don't know if it's like. I feel like that's just the film.
To me, there's certain points to that, but it's almost like he's tricking you out.
That's a good.
It's almost like he's building the tension, and then he like shows you behind the film a lot of times. Like that is, and I can see that too.
Yeah.
But and like I've said, like he did not care. He did not want drama. Like the film.
But that's why I just disagree with the point kind of. Is because like I don't know. I don't think that makes the documentary bad. Like.
But that's why he.
Or not documentary.
That's why Grierson didn't like. That's why he didn't think Vertov made documentaries, because he thought documentaries were art, but he thought Vertov only recorded. He didn't have art in his movies, like.
And see, that's also where I disagree. Yeah. That's also where I disagree, because obviously that's.
But that's how people saw documentary, right? They saw it as this kind of realistic art, almost, you know.
Vertov's is realistic, though.
It is, yes, it is. Like it's a gray area.
Yeah.
In terms, like it depends on what you mean by realistic, too, which is a whole nother.
That just seems like a man that's narrow-minded to me. No, I'm just kidding.
But that kind of, to keep going, that kind of gets me to these kind of points we've been talking about. This goes to why Vertov became popular again is, Hicks makes this point where basically the reason why in the 30s and the 40s these points I've been saying, like Vertov wasn't liked, he wasn't objective, you know, he wasn't realistic or didn't have these certain normal narrative arcs that a documentary would have. In the 60s, with like people like Godard and even in the Soviet Union itself, they started to see those kind of documentaries that's almost fake. You know, like they're trying to be real, but they're still fake, like you said, Blake, right? So it's like, why not just be open about what you're doing? Like literally what Vertov does with Man with the Movie Camera and Kino, right? He's even showing you behind the process itself, right? He's not. He's trying to demystify, like he says, right? And think about Godard and stuff. Like they're almost breaking down the film for you, you know, to show you that it's like they're showing it. They're almost making it fake to a degree. Like they're showing you this is a film over and over again, right? Like a lot of good artists, even 60s films are like that.
Yeah.
And then obviously Chris Marker, like they're not, and maybe it is kind of just this narrative or story that I think, obviously Vertov hated, but I think a lot of people think of movies with those aspects specifically, right? And then a lot of movies are based all around that. Like they think of the story first when they think of a lot of movies, and they're like, oh, how did I remember the characters and stuff? Yeah. But for Vertov, you can't really do that.
Oh, yeah.
Like what character are you gonna remember when you think
Moscow?
Of yeah, no, that's exactly the point though.
Yeah.
Moscow is the character.
Yeah.
Right, and that's all the little shots are just different aspects of that character.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't think of it like that. Like in terms of a classic movie or anything, right?
Yeah.
Like that would they'd be like, what are you talking about? Like if you showed like someone that like loves like I don't know Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I love Raiders of the
I
Lost Ark.
do love it too.
Okay. A lot of obviously it's a great movie or whatever, but in terms of
it's a great movie or whatever.
If people only watch that type of movie, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes,
like,
I know
that kind of narrative story. Basically you have to have a good story to have a good movie. Almost,
Okay, that's fair.
It's just not that. But like
the filmmaking can't save the story. Is what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, they think of characters as single people, not
yes.
As a city or a donkey or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Or a film as a story, right? A film can't be a song; it's a story.
Yeah.
Right, or a film can't be whatever Man with a Movie Camera is, but it's its own thing, really. It's its own thing. But yeah, to keep going here, like I kind of want to point out, and this is this kind of 60s. Have you guys heard of the movie Chronicle of a Summer?
I think I have heard of that.
It's like the guy that made it's the Gene Rausch, Edgar Morin movie. Like they're the people that were kind of involved in the Dziga Vertov group with Godard a little later.
Oh, is it the one where they asked the French people what's the meaning of what's happiness?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
What's the meaning of happiness? I think that's what
it?
it's called. Yeah, what they asked, because I think Marker did a movie similar too.
And that's perfect because I'm pretty sure he does that. I haven't seen Lullaby yet, but I'm pretty sure he does that in Lullaby. Like that was just like a central question. Like is
that's what I remember because I remember seeing the description of a Chris Marker movie being similar to that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, but this Gene Rausch movie is made by Edgar Morin and Gene Rausch, and they're kind of the ones that started like at least in the West to get Vertov really popular. Like, and maybe they. I know Godard definitely worked with them on later movies for Kino Pravda and stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, he has a quote and he's the one that brought into the popular phrase cinema verite. I'm sure both of you guys have heard that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, cinema verite or like what's like guerrilla filmmaking, that kind of.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Cinema verite is like the main word for that.
I knew guerrilla filmmaking. I didn't know it was called cinema verite, but okay. Yeah.
It's a popular phrase, but anyway, that phrase literally comes from a translation that an old French writer, Georges Sadaul, in 1948, was translating Kino Pravda. And that translates to cinema verite literally.
Well, verite sounds like the start of Vertov.
It means truth.
That too.
And cinema is Kino.
Damn.
So Kino Pravda is cinema.
That worked out perfectly. Yeah.
And so literally, Vertov's phrase has become popular, even more popular in a different translation, cinema verite.
Sure. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
That's it's so awesome. I never knew. I've heard of cinema verite way before Kino Pravda, obviously. Yeah. Let me read the quote though. That this is from Gene Rausch, I think. It's either Gene Rausch or Edgar Morin, either one of them. Quote: I'm one of the people responsible for this phrase, quote, cinema verite, and it's really an homage to Dziga Vertov, who completely invented the kind of film we do today.
Sheesh.
Yeah. So like, this is what I love about film, and it's kind of related to like to kind of date ourselves. The Sight and Sound list. But this is what's cool about the Sight and Sound list. You never know what old movie is just going to re-pop up and become popular again. Because it influenced a random group of filmmakers somewhere in the world. You know.
True.
Like think about it. Vertov never knew 40 years later in France, those were the people that were going to pick up his films and keep his name going on. Awesome, but also in the Soviet Union too. There were direct documentary filmmakers in the Soviet Union that came back and started being inspired by Vertov and stuff after. Because it was honestly harder for people in the Soviet Union a lot of times to get access to his movies, so I can't really blame them. That's and the kind of last point I wanted to make before we get into the movies is he makes this point that this is kind of nowadays what makes Vertov relevant, and I kind of love this too, and it's kind of related to what we were talking about with Godard is like a lot of people like, and it's obvious people don't trust the image like you would have back in the day. You can doctor an image all you want. Like you never know what's doctored, what's CGI, what's real, what's literal. What's that face like? What am I thinking of? That technology where you can like make anyone's face almost now, like
face
Deepfake.
Deepfakes, yes,
okay,
yes. Deepfakes, all the stuff like to where like the image alone is not powerful enough anymore, right? You actually have to do something with it. You actually have to be creative with that. Like, so even in the age of like digital images, Vertov even becomes more relevant, right? Because like there would have been certain documentary filmmakers that only relied on just filming the image that might not work with a digital age. You know, where if you are making more films like this, you can kind of get obviously Marker even made digital films, you know, in video, so it's still relevant like that too. But so yeah, those are kind of the main points I wanted to go through with Vertov. What comes to your mind before we get into movies? Is there anything you want to conclude before we kind of just go to his lineage?
No, I'm just glad that we watched his sound movies, especially.
Okay,
Like, I'm glad we got to that. But I loved it. I loved everything that we watched. Honestly,
I didn't realize. I've learned a lot how I didn't realize he was this influential, to be honest. So
no, I learned more too, and like I still haven't even watched all of the Godard. Kino Pravdas. I mean,
they were that bad.
No, I actually like the second one. The first one I didn't really like. So I'm only 2 in, so there's like 6 or 7, I think. No, but it's all over. It's like even ways that people wouldn't know they're influenced by Vertov. You know, like just this kind of approach of you film something for documentary, but you still make it artistic.
Yeah.
You know, and that leads us to these 2 films. Why I picked these. If I Had Four Camels, and that's the first one I'm doing, so I'll just go there for now. Overall, what do you guys think of the movie? Did you guys like it? Have you guys seen this before?
No, I've seen it before. I'd seen it once before. This time the subtitles were way better than the ones I had before. So I mean, the subtitles before were still okay, but this time it made it better. But the thing was, you don't even really notice the subtitles, at least on first watch, because the images are flashing by, kind of like, I don't know. He makes you like, I think you said earlier. He uses the voiceover basically as something to distract you, like
or
to make you pay
it's
attention
element,
more. It's to make you pay attention more to like all the to make you pay attention to the images even more.
Yes,
you know, like.
Or if you want, you can pay attention to just the words.
Yes, like yeah, for sure. And that's why I did the first time probably, because this time I was mostly just watching the images. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I kind of don't remember a lot of the story. But
it's not a story. It's more just a guy explaining his travels. You know,
what he wants
just
like Sans Soleil and all those.
Yeah. But,
no. What about you?
It's my first time watching it, and I watched it yesterday, and I was like, oh my god, these subtitles are so fast. I need to watch it again, because I was learning now. I didn't really need to, because like, you know, it's not glad you watched it. It's not essential, but like it was good, because I remember some stuff from it now that I probably wouldn't have remembered, because it's definitely like it just was like, it's faster than, like, the subtitles were faster than some like Italian movies like I've seen. Like, it was crazy. But yeah, I really like the images were really cool. I love the La Jetée, you know, slideshow images.
Yeah.
Just amazing. And yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a few callbacks to La Jetée.
Yeah, but
well, yeah, and I honestly don't know if he had to do that, because I don't know if he was allowed to like video in Russia. Like, he might have only been allowed to take a camera. So that type of thing like actually plays like into this movie more.
I can see that.
And I think at the the quote that you guys both have is like, the photographer is like.
Well, I was going to mention that here.
Yeah.
So I'll get to that.
Okay. But that's literally that's why I love this movie and La Jetée so much, because it's literally like, photographers are cinema, like they can be like cinema makers as well, or movie makers.
Oh yes. I mean, yeah. No, that kind of gets me to my why. So why this movie? Because even if you think of the 2 as documentaries that are poetic, that you don't even think. I don't think initially most people would think of these 2 together. Maybe just in terms of they're just not normal documentaries. Like, that's kind of why they group. But like, to me, like, once you go a little deeper, you can kind of see where Vertov is inspired. I mean, Marker is inspired by Vertov. But the reason why I picked these was just, there's 2 reasons. First was that quote you said that I'm going to read here in a second. Because I was reading Vertov's writings, and he has a quote that's very similar. So let me just read that one first. Let me read the one that's in If I Had Four Camels. It's pretty short. Quote: "The photo is the hunt. It's the instinct of hunting without the desire to kill. It's the hunt of angels. You track, you aim, you fire, and click. Instead of a dead man, you make him eternal." So great quote. Yes. Okay, this one's a little longer, but I kind of have to read the whole thing because it's just so good. Yeah. I'm like, damn, like,
there's some great
because I had watched If I Had Four Camels first.
Yeah.
And I've seen it twice last year, and I remember that quote. And so reading this, like, you'll see why I recognize it so easily. So, This is Vertov. Quote, he's a hunter. A hunter of film shots. Shots of truth. Film truth. He does not shut himself up in an office. He leaves the cage of his room, paints from nature, observes, experiments, takes his bearings in strange surroundings, makes instant decisions, camouflages, making use of natural resources, and at the vital moment fires accurately. A film sniper. Calmness, bravely, coolness, initiative, self-control. No clerical or other procedures. Simultaneous decision and implementation. And then next paragraph. He's a scout, an observer, a marksman, a pathfinder, an explorer, but he's a poet as well. He penetrates life for artistic purposes. He synthesizes his observations into original works of art. He makes artistic discoveries, pours precious grains of genuine truth into songs of truth, epics of truth, into a symphony of objective reality.
Yeah.
So, especially that beginning, but I have to read the whole thing because I just love that quote.
No,
But,
it's amazing.
the hunt, just comparing the hunting aspect of almost the hunting aspect of photography, right?
Oh yeah.
And comparing it to kind of like a battle or killing, because I always love at the end of Enthusiasm where he says like the "Let's battle" in songs.
Yeah.
When he shows the songs back and forth, it's like it's that kind of using battle imagery for songs is it's just a cool thing, and like
It is.
I just love how that's how this movie starts too. He's basically just starting with a Vertov quote, and but yeah. So maybe some quick things before we actually get into the movie. I want to mention was this is one thing that a book I read by about Chris Marker a while ago called by Nora Alter. She points out is Marker underscores this theme that I was kind of talking about with digital imagery and everything, but Marker's already pointed this out is you can't really trust everything the image is saying, right? Like there's a point in the movie where he takes a picture of someone, or that he shows a picture, and he's kind of like happy about he's like almost like uplifting about the Soviet people and everything, and then he says, quote, I'm not naive. I know that these people whom I photographed during a moment of happiness or in good humor are the same as those who applaud when a writer is condemned for 7 years in the cell because he has used a couple of dozen old poetic forms. The same people. If the photograph captures anything, then it is a fleeting instant of truth that is no longer there except as an image the moment the shutter snaps. So like basically Marker's already kind of admitted that the image is just that, right? It's just an image, right? Like you can manipulate how you want. You can make them seem happy, right?
Yeah, there's another moment in the movie where he sort of shot I think it was like a boy or a man holding a cat or a dog by the leash.
Yep.
And then he was like, "Oh, look at dog," and then he's like, "But the dog's dead or whatever."
It's the cat.
Strangled
It's
to
the
death.
cat.
The cat strangled to death. Or
Yep. And do you remember one point? And we'll just get into the movie because why not?
Might as well.
Do you remember one point in the movie where the guy? I don't remember the exact quote. I don't remember what they're talking about. But he says something. Oh yeah, they show a picture of someone from Soviet Union. He's like, "Oh yeah, this guy rang the bell in the Potemkin."
Yeah.
And then the guy's like, "That's not true." He's like, "Oh yeah, it's not true." He just laughs, and they just keep
There's
going.
multiple times when they have like.
But that's the whole point. The whole thing's a movie. It's written. All the voices are written by Chris Marker.
Yeah.
And we talked about this with Sans Soleil. Like even with who's the computer guy in Sans Soleil?
Oh no, yeah.
With the computer images.
Yeah, the composer or whatever.
Yes. You think he's at least a real guy? It's like nope, that's Chris Marker.
That's Chris Marker too.
Yep, yeah. But that's the whole point, right? Like, but I love it just how casual, like, oh, that's not true, and then they just keep going on, like everything he says is true after that, and you're like, oh yeah, that's true. But that's the point, right? It's like it's true in the way, like you said, it feels true because there's almost a certain poetic truth about it, right? Yes. Even if like the exact thing is not true, that's kind of what film is, right? It's almost like a twisting of reality that's trying to be true, to feel true.
Yes.
It can be that anyway. Obviously, films can just be there to make money, which we're gonna, that's a spoiler for next week. But.
Spoiler for next week.
Yeah. So, what sticks out with you in the movie? We don't have to go in order. What sticks out?
For me, like my favorite parts are when he would like be like, "This is 6 a.m. in this country," but then he got to another. This is 6 a.m. He would compare like different like similar situations in different countries, which I thought was like super interesting.
Yes.
Just the fact that like. Yeah.
Yes.
No, some of my favorite parts are whenever he's in Moscow, and that's those are probably my favorite parts, and specifically whenever he opens up in Moscow because he's just showing the city, and he's like at first, whenever I first went into Moscow, I didn't understand why people thought it was such an amazing city. I just saw I think it's a shot of the Kremlin, that's it, and there's like no one around, and then he's like. But then I realized it's the people that make the city, and that's the difference between the West and Moscow.
There's a shot, one of the most memorable shots in the movie too, where at that part where he's like it's a picture of like a building, but then there was like birds flying
I
in
love
front
that
of
shot.
it.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah.
That's the Moscow. That's the
That's the
that's
one I'm
the
talking
Moscow
about.
scene,
Yeah,
yeah.
because he's saying like Moscow wouldn't exist without its people, whereas like
Yes.
I think he said whereas Paris would exist because it's like just a bunch.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, that's
I don't know,
where I
something like
disagree.
that. I don't know.
This is what I think he's trying to do. At least what I think Marker does is he's trying to make the movie feel universal by talking about things that are extremely specific, right? So like, he will describe something that's only true in the Soviet Union, but the fact that it feels true to us almost is like you can be like you could the way he's applying that to the Soviet Union, you could feel like you could apply that to any place. You just have to use a different thing,
Yes,
you know, and that's
sure.
what this is going to apply to Mind of Clay later on, right? Like this is almost his version of like having Mani Kaul's version of having respect for a certain tradition or culture, whatever it may be, whatever you're filming, you know, and that's kind of what I think Marker does so well with all these different aspects. Like one of my favorite parts is a little later on with when he starts talking about Korea. You know, when he talks about the Korean factory,
Yeah.
and he starts talking about like
About how Japan ripped Korea off of everything.
yes, well, yeah, but see that's the thing. That's what I'm talking about. He just goes almost on like a lot of kind of just interesting facts about Korea, just his love for it, obviously.
Yes.
You know where because where he says where they invented the printing press before Gutenberg, armor plating before Potemkin, and then there are 1,000 ways of living and painting, which the Japanese have borrowed from with the acknowledgement for which they're known, or something. And he says that sarcastically,
Yeah.
you know, like and this is kind of a good quote, and I want to see what you guys think what he means by this, because at the end of this kind of Korea scene, he says, quote, "I'm not playing the eternal Korea against the popular one. It's atemporal dances. I seized them at the time of their pause, in a factory, in a workers' club on the Pacific Coast, in time." Anything? Especially that first one. I'm not playing the eternal Korea against the popular Korea. What do you think he's trying to say? Like, that's kind of what I'm trying to say. Like, he's trying to almost, like, he doesn't want to say, like, just because I'm showing these aspects of Korea, that's all of Korea.
Yes.
You know?
Okay, I see.
But at the same time, he's trying to say, this is still Korea, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you can still feel...
It's very much like Vertov.
There's almost like a tension
it's very
there,
much
right?
like Vertov in Stride Soviet, where he's showing like this is old Russia, but he's showing things that are in Russia still. You know, like it's very much the same.
And I love how you said, like, you left the Moscow stuff, because that's obviously the Vertov. I mean, he was influenced by a lot of Soviet filmmakers, not just Vertov.
Yeah.
But you can obviously see just the way he loves Moscow is definitely...
Yes.
Not only Moscow, too, but I love how the stuff he said about that quote. And I'm just going to read it because I love the thing you said when he's at 6 o'clock. So he says, "I can't resist the type of film that walks you from one dawn to the next, saying things like, it's 6 o'clock on Earth, 6 o'clock at St. Martin Canal, 6 o'clock at the Gotha Canal in Sweden, 6 o'clock in Havana." And that's kind of what I was saying earlier, where like he's like almost being specific, like it's 6 o'clock here, right? But at the same time, there's always a 6 o'clock somewhere else, right? And it has its own things. It has its own things of film. It has its own kind of people, right? And that's like this movie almost makes it more obvious just because by the structure of it, right? It's a photographer just describing his photographs to his friends.
Yeah. No, and it's hilarious because whenever it's like he's going like whenever he's filming the Russians, he's talking like there's just a gaze the Russians have. There's this Russian gaze, and you can't find this in the French or something like that.
He said
there's like a Hungarian, or I think he said there's a Hungarian gaze. There's a Russian gaze.
Wasn't there a thing like
or was there a Hungarian gaze? I can't remember.
They said there's not. I think.
Wasn't there a scene where he's
there's
like
not Hungarian?
He's like
gaze,
when I film like Japanese like girls, they turn and wave to the camera, but when I film like the Russian girls, they get like mad at you and like, yeah. Is that the same scene?
I think that's around the same scene.
Okay, because I remember that. I was like, oh my god. But
and this kind of reminded me when we're talking about the structure of this movie, when we were talking about stories earlier, like should a film have a story, etc., all that kind of stuff. Like, this movie kind of has a story, right? It has a story of an amateur photographer describing to his two or three friends, his experiences, right?
Yeah, his travels.
But like, it's just almost such an obvious excuse just to show the pictures, right?
Oh, yeah.
And to obviously get some maybe basically poetry or essay writing, right? With the images, right?
Yeah.
That's basically the excuse. That's the structure. That's but it's not the reason why the movie's made, right? It's not the reason. It sounds kind of just boring on the surface, right? Or could be boring.
A bunch of still images.
Yeah, a bunch of still images, and a guy just a bunch of voices kind of just talk about random stuff almost at some points, but also describe them. Like, that's why. Okay, but anyway, why I mentioned that was because I want to mention literally my favorite quote, and I kind of feel bad because I haven't seen any Jean Cocteau movies yet. And I really need to.
I have.
Oh yeah, which one?
Beauty and the Beast.
Okay.
Worth watching.
But I really need to because literally, like, I still think about this quote all the time, and it's at the beginning of this movie, and he puts it literally on the screen too, which I love. But it's quote, "Since these mysteries are beyond me, let's pretend we're organizing them," and then Marker says, "That's the motto of every photograph," and that's literally the whole structure of the movie, right? Yeah. Like, he's almost pretending that they're organized. Like, all these pictures are random, right? Like, I think in like the Letterboxd description it says he traveled like 40 countries or something. Yeah. Something crazy. Like, that's what's so mysterious about Marker too. Like, a lot of people don't know about his backstory. It's not very well known. Like how he made money, how he made travel, money. All this kind of stuff. But obviously, like, he was traveling all over the place, like, and then finding out how to. And this is obviously the Vertov influence. You film everything first, like, you could tell he's obviously just taking these pictures, and then you figure out how to edit them, right? But he obviously has, like I said, the motto of every photograph. He has that theme in mind already when he's taking these pictures. And that because in this one he says that's the motto of every photograph, and he gives the Jean Cocteau quote. But in Sans Soleil he also has another one from the it's from an old, like, it's a very famous old Chinese book about like it's like a list book. I don't remember the name. I have to remember it. But anyway, the quote from it is she had like made a list. Like, apparently this was a popular thing in like Chinese royalty from like for like the queens and stuff. They would make like in their diaries and stuff, they would just like write lists about different things. Yeah. And one of the lists this book had was things that quicken the heart. And then Chris Marker says the same kind of thing. Like, that's the motto of everything I film or something. And that's what I'm thinking about when I film. And I kind of like love those where he basically gives you the theme of the whole film in those little quotes towards the end. And so that's obviously why I picked it. And then one of the major themes in the movie, and I think this is not it's not story, but it's a theme, and he mentions over and over, is the difference between the castle and the garden. Yes. Right? Yes. And the castle is the kind of like, you could argue capitalism. It's basically the societal structure that we have, where he says literally the castle makes it almost communication impossible between who's at the top and who's at the bottom, right? There's almost this, even the images don't do enough, right? There's just this impossible communication. And then that's opposed to the garden, right? This kind of just almost basic natural instincts of love and, you know, all these cheesy words that, you know, sound bad if you but they're still true though, right? Like he says, they make themselves known by like the most simple gestures, right? And he shows, like, I love this scene, like where he just shows like people holding hands, people on different shoulders, you know, like animals too. And that's where he says a lot of the garden comes from, and you can almost see that in humans, right? We have almost both aspects to us, right? This kind of like calculating, I don't know, like almost two human aspects to us, and then almost our animal side that is almost like more loving at times. But
cold calculation versus heart passions.
Yeah, but that's the almost dual nature of humanity, right?
Yes.
And
like, for sure.
And then one of he says something like this at the end. Is like, it doesn't. It's not that it's the distance of how far away it is. It's not the important part. It's the fact that it exists, right? The fact that there is this other world we can choose. You know? And those kind of themes are underlying the movie, where like he still shows obviously the castle, those aspects, right? But there's still both that he still believes in, at least.
Well, he shows like how the garden infiltrated the castle, basically. Like I think that's what there's a quote in the movie like that. Like the guard has infiltrated the castle. Or something like that. Yeah. I think that was towards the end, actually.
Yeah, it is towards the end, because that's when the garden comes in the second half. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had. Does anything stick out? Anything else you guys?
Great animals, shots of animals in this movie.
Yes,
oh my god. Yes.
Dude, I mean, there's one crazy cut though. Remember when he's talking about Sweden, and he's talking about how, or is it Sweden? It's one of the Nordic countries.
I feel like remember we talked about Sweden.
Where he's talking about all the other people in the world, even their biggest dreams, they couldn't dream of what this man has, and he's showing it. They're showing him.
I think that's Sweden. Yeah.
But right after that, he's like, they're missing one thing. What are they missing? And then he cuts to like an alien-looking picture, and it says immortality.
Oh, and then he cuts to.
No, that's not an immortality. That's not an alien. That's like a. I think that's like
a skeleton.
It's a mummy or something.
Yeah.
Like
but you saying that remembers a shot in the movie where he showed like a statue, like he cut to a shot of a statue in like China or Japan, and from the front I thought it was like some alien-looking thing, and then he cut to a shot overhead. It was a statue, but like it looked like an animal when he was like shooting it from directly in front of.
I don't know why I don't remember those.
But I don't know, that just randomly
okay.
popped in my mind when I said it. But yeah, keep.
I don't know why, but the quote during that one is awesome because like whenever someone dies, they always have the same thing, the upside down smile, which is just a frown. and then that's whenever he shows like.
But he's always doing that, right? He's like taking your emotion one way, bringing it back down, and then he brings it down and brings it back up, and that's kind of how this the emotions flow through the movies, like, and that's kind of why. It's more important, at least, that you have the feeling of. I kind of like at least the vibe of it, even if you're like, I don't know anything that happened per se, right? If I had to describe it specifically, what's going on, like from A to B to C.
It like all the dialogue and stuff. Like I didn't understand like some of the stuff they were saying, but it was just like all the stuff they were saying. Like the writing was so poetic. And
that's why it would be, and that's why I kind of like Sansoy too. And it's worth watching the English translation, and why he wanted English speakers to watch. The English translation, because he understood, like, it was definitely better if you understood French and you were watching this, right? Because you don't have to focus as much on the reading aspect, especially if you're not used to reading. Like, it's hard, like, for the first time when you're trying to pay attention to the images too that also are going fast, right? Because every image is a different thing almost. You're like trying to you want to almost focus in on like, oh, that's a good picture, that's a good picture.
Exactly.
And it's like you're trying to pay attention to every picture that changes, but at the same time you're trying to keep a coherent. This is what this guy's talking about, But how does what is he talking about, relate to these random images he's showing most of the times? Like, that's why, I mean, it is more of a, like, Marker's obviously known as one of the founders of the video essay. And it is more video essay, right? It's like, it's made to be watched over and over again on YouTube theoretically, so.
They made it 45 minutes long just for that reason.
Yes,
they're 50 minutes long.
If I was an hour and a half, I wouldn't have rewatched it.
And I mean, that's and I'm not even kidding. That's another reason why I love both these movies. They're both under an hour and a half too.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
If you can make a perfect movie in under an hour and a half, you should. But
that's cool.
But yeah, so that leads us to our next one though. Is Mati Manas or Mind of Clay? Let me ask. And this one maybe is even more than the Marker one is. When I said I'm going to do a Mani Kaul movie for Vertov series, and now you guys have watched this, what comes to your mind on, why that's why I picked it, or I don't get it. Either way.
The main thing I noticed that was similar to Vertov was how Mani Kaul reframes pottery. He uses pottery to tell, he uses his shots of pottery, his documentary on pottery, to reframe it as like a commentary on like the history of was India
history
or pottery history? I don't know.
Basically, yeah, no.
Some history, something history. I didn't understand a lot of it.
Okay, this is the way I would see it, and I was going to mention this, and it really it's only clicked for me in kind of watching it. Like, I've watched it once last year and 3 times this year, so basically 4 times in the last year or so. And I think it makes more sense if you watch it. And actually read more Mani Kaul's writings, I might realize this, is if you watch the movie, basically if the pottery itself was trying to tell its own history.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's going in and out of the real pottery versus like almost like what the pottery was dreaming about, what it saw.
Yeah.
Like and I'm serious, like he's actually trying to do that. Which is crazy. Like he talks about in a lot of his writings, like how can I almost like understand the consciousness of something else, and not only people, but also trees. Like,
but I was gonna tie that in. The way Mani Kaul does that reminds me how Vertov will reframe, like a factory to be a symbolism for like the history, like the Soviet Union building itself back up. That's kind of how it reminded me of Vertov.
Yes. But it's not a direct, and this is important for more Vertov, but definitely Mani Kaul. It's not a direct representation, right?
Yeah. Okay,
it's almost like association, like. It's still a documentary image, right? The image only is like, so if it's pottery, it's still actually only saying, like if you only looked at that single image, you would still be like, oh, it's pottery, right? It's a good shot of pottery. But you can also associate it with other themes throughout the course of the movie, right? But at the same time, it still has that kind of just, it's pottery. Yeah. Like Vertov, it's still just a factory being filmed.
Yes.
It doesn't have to fake anything to make that point.
Yes.
That you're saying also.
That's good,
right?
Yeah.
But what about you, Blake?
I agree with Luke for sure. And whenever I told you, I could understand why you chose this to compare to Vertov is because Mani Kaul loves filming people at work. Like, I was watching this movie and I was like, like just the way he films everyone. Like I'm specifically thinking, especially of that lady making the one pot, and just like stomping out with their heels the entire time, and then cutting it with their hand, moving the pieces out of the way. And then I think of the people like making the clay figurines and stuff like that, making the clay paintings, and I'm like, this is literally what Vertov was doing the entire time he was filming all of his like silent documentaries, at least, like just filming people at work. And I don't know, that's what I got out of that part. I definitely agree with what Luke said too, though, like showing the pottery as like a history. Or like showing like the pottery as history of India, like, and the pottery trying to tell its own story almost.
Yes.
Because you can see that even just like at the very beginning with like no humans at all. It's just a cat in the pot. It's like the pot retelling its story of like the cat like giving birth in the pot.
Yes, like how the pot would tell that story.
Yeah, how the pot would tell the story. Yeah,
and it's like, and those two like kind of like kind of youngish characters, you know, probably 20s or 30s, just walking through the museum and stuff. Like, they're supposed to be us almost. Like,
that one gave me big La Jate vibes. So
oh,
whenever they were walking through the museum and La Jate.
Okay, honestly, honestly,
that's what I was thinking.
That's honestly one of those memorable scenes to me too. I love how he films though, like just how it looks.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. It looks amazing in this movie.
Honestly, I really like that.
I mean, the whole movie looks amazing though.
Yes, the whole movie looks amazing.
Oh my god.
Because I love how you said that Vertov thing about how he films like basically people at work, because that's obviously a huge thing, right, for both of them. Mani Kaul has this quote, "The method of borrowing from tradition must be unique to you." And that's kind of what I like, right? Because he obviously is borrowing from filmmakers of the past.
Yeah.
But there's like literally at the end of the day, there's nothing like a Mani Kaul movie.
No, there's
really
definitely
not. Like even I was like, you could watch all of Vertov's movie and you still wouldn't be prepared for this. For a Mani Kaul movie, because it is so different too, even if you can see the influences.
Yes, and like this is what my roommate said after. I don't remember if he said that you said this, or if it was after you guys watched Mine and Clay though. He was like, I can see why Dany says like Vertov is, or not Vertov, why Mani Kaul is the perfect fusion of like slow cinema and Vertov and like that type of documentary. He's literally the fusion of those two things, the perfect fusion, honestly. But
I mean, that's the thing. Of those two, but other things.
Other things too, for sure.
He's deeply inspired by Indian music and Indian tradition.
Oh yes, no, that's another thing that I felt watching this movie that had a Vertov vibe, is like him just trying to lull you into the movie with the sounds that he's playing. Vertov does that all the time.
That's why Enthusiasm is so amazing.
Watching
it, because it's live sounds.
Yes,
right. Like the sounds. The same thing as Enthusiasm. Like you'll hear like a large clacking all of a sudden, you know, like in Money, like, or like one of my favorite shots in this movie is like when the camera slowly pans across this like clay lion, and then you see its face, but the noise is like kind of just this clicking from the background almost. It's like basically just live noises you know you recorded throughout. But so yeah, I kind of wanted to read a couple quotes here before we get into the movies. I'll read. This is just something I found interesting and why I kind of wanted to pick Mani Kaul. I was reading his. There's a book called Uncloven Space, which uncloven just means divided, really, so divided space. And it's just a book that's by basically he calls Mani Kaul his guru, basically, or his teacher, and he's just asking him questions over and over. It's like, I guess, 3 different conversations they had in a book form. But anyway, he has a quote in that book where he says, let me just read it, because he talks about how he got into films in the first place. And he said, quote, that's why when I first saw a documentary, because I was used to watching so many films, it gave me a jolt because of its non-fictional nature. I didn't understand this aspect then, but I could tell this for sure that there were no actors, no story, nothing, but my interest was aroused, and that appeal has remained to depart from linear narrative form. Yeah. And he says, like, from watching his first documentary, like, a long time ago, he basically had that kind of, it's his whole career of, like, I can't make narrative form, like, filmmaking after that, you know, like, and it's honestly, like, I'm not to his... Well, he still likes fictional films, like, and he actually made some too. But even if you watch his fictional films, there's no linear narrative, right?
Mani?
Yeah, Mani Kaul.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, yeah, definitely not.
Yes.
Duvida, I could not recall the plot to you.
Dude, I've seen Ushka Roti, Davida, and
One Day Before the
Rain. All 3 of those movies, I have no fucking idea what's happening most of the time. So,
but they're not. Cool. They're not about like a story in terms of. And this was really important to him. He didn't care about. Obviously, like you're reading that quote, he doesn't care about linear narrative, but more like, or he doesn't care about the story in terms of you have to be able to describe it perfectly after. Yeah. The number one thing he's after is creating an experience through all these different elements, right? And almost like to a certain extent, you can have almost a certain experience and only remember the experience of like, I remember it, I liked it, or I didn't like it, without remembering much from it. right? Or especially specific words from it or something.
Well, that's definitely the Vertov thing. Like, he wants to make you feel the movie, not he wants you to experience it.
Yes. Yeah. And through all these different elements, and that's what makes it a documentary. Is all of it is live recorded, right? Live recorded sounds you hear in the movie. The music is traditional for basically all of it, and then also the stuff we're seeing filmed is actually just pottery being made, and also old pottery, different people being interviewed about their methods and everything. All of that's in the same movie, So that's basically all. Okay, I'll read. I want to read a Mani Kaul quote. I'll read at the end though, because let's talk about the movie first. Another one. So yeah, I mean not the other one, the main one. So, what sticks out from the movie specifically?
It's just there's some way it like flows. It's like unmistakable. It's something like weird. I can't describe it, but it's just so poetic to me.
Okay, is there any specific things that stick out in your mind though when you say that? Because I know exactly
the way he moves the camera to me is like very much
yes.
like that. The sounds play a big part of it, and I mean pottery making is just a very cinematic thing. Like I said in my Letterboxd review, like I wish there was more in the pottery making was featured more in movies because like oh my god, it's cinematic. Like just the creation, the motion, the molding, oh my god, yes.
No, there's like the guy at the beginning, and there's this like. So really, Blake said this before we started. Like, I really didn't know what the story was, and that's the thing. There is no single story of the movie. There's a few. There's a lot. There's like there's different stories going on, right? There's like we see the cats in the pot, and we see them say like they're almost narrating a story of the kittens. We're seeing real people talk about their real, almost like thinking on how they make pottery and stuff.
Yeah.
We see we hear different. There's one of my favorite parts, and I'll just say it now, is my favorite part of the movie, or at least one of them, is how I mentioned how important the like interview scene in 3 Songs of Lennon was for a lot of people, and how basically for the first time, not for one of the first times basically, but how it's used almost as a real interview, but also basically to enhance the film too, as a almost poetically. And this literally has one of my favorite moments, is where we get and Mani Kaul has mentioned this in an interview, where we get like basically the only time where one of the interviewers basically merges with the almost other aspect of the film, where where we see like those 2 people walking through the museum.
Yes.
They're almost in their own movie, and they always go into the dream world of like the different pottery.
Damn.
Right. And the one time
I think of it more so. Well, yeah, kind of like for sure, kind of like that. But like each pot, like they're walking through the museum and then they stop at a specific one, and then like that tells its story.
Yes,
like it's telling a story to them.
Yes.
I didn't even think
but
about
so he said like one time these 2 almost merge, where it's like real life and the fiction. Is this scene almost towards the middle of the movie? It's 1/3 of the way towards the movie where we see her with a baby donkey in her lap, the main girl, and she's interviewing someone there. And interviewing a girl there who's telling her about the dreams she's had, about God providing her dreams everything she's ever wanted. And then it's just a great scene. It's just like a wide shot. Like, we haven't got an interview like this yet, so he just spends a lot of time, and she's like describing everything God gave her and stuff. And then he cuts from that shot to Donkey, basically the same angle as Al Hassar Baltzar, kind of obviously making a Bresson reference if you know about it, but still it's just a great moment too of her describing what she dreamed about, and then he cuts to donkeys.
Yeah. Was the angle? Was it?
It's a little low angle.
Low angle.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's like the same. I'm pretty sure. Like, it's one of the.
Bresson shoots to him in a bizarre, Balthazar and
It is a few different ways, but it's one of the main ways.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But yeah, just because there's little moments in this throughout where you think it is kind of random, but he is making associations between the scenes too.
Yes.
And that's one example where the donkey is to some degree, he's saying something about the donkey and God almost. Like, I think he's trying to say Bresson is basically, kind of like his God, or not.
Bresson's like his God.
He's showing his respect anyway. At the
this is why Dany
because no, but to be honest, dude, you just have to understand how much he talks about Bresson to really understand what I'm talking about.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
No, you really do. Yeah, he talks about it all the time.
Bresson's a God.
Is Bresson your God?
I mean, it depends on how you find God, but okay.
He's one of them. He's one of them.
But yeah, so because there's one other example that I really want to point to, and these are like basically the 2 main examples, because we could just go through all the shots if we wanted to, but that would be too much time, obviously.
They'd be beautiful to go through.
Yeah.
I need to watch it a few more times before I can go through every shot, though. I feel like just to appreciate it.
No, because like there's like it's a movie where you can watch it one time and be like, okay, I'm gonna pay attention to this thing.
Honestly, yeah.
And then you watch it
Same with If I Had Four Dromedaries too.
This is true
Yeah.
basically for all great movies, because
Yeah.
a great movie is not one thing; it has a bunch of things in it, right? There's much things making it go. So, but for this one, so the other scene, the other thing that really sticks out to mine every time I watch it, it's just like fucking amazing for me. Is so like, do you remember the like almost like, I don't want to describe it. It's like Tarkovsky-esque, where it's like the floating camera through the.
I was gonna
the
say
town.
Vertov-esque, so.
Oh yeah, like for the factory and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, no, but
That's
the
one of my
noise,
favorite
though.
scenes too.
Yeah,
That's one of my favorite
actually,
scenes,
Vertov
too.
uses noise like that too. That kind of like weird droning noise.
Yeah.
You know, and it's going through the town, and it's reading some kind of scripture about basically Brahma and Parvati, which is basically like God in Hinduism, and and it's like describing like basically God is watching over the creation kind of thing. Like, I created you, right? Don't forget God created you kind of thing. And it's going through all the town like that.
Yeah.
Like a God's eye view of the town. And then it cuts to this amazing shot of this man and woman that basically have been making clay figures their whole life. And remember, because I don't know if you guys remember the scene, but where they have the hole cut out in their wall because someone came and bought something off their wall because that's how good it looked.
Yeah.
And they're being interviewed with the hole in their wall.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to just her being interviewed, and he asks her like almost like if she's quote unquote God. What are your favorite creatures you made? And she's like, I don't know, like the birds, like literally like she's God. She's like naming all the creatures she's made. And he's made this connection over because he makes this connection at the very beginning too, with one of the potters being interviewed, and he's like, yeah, God and potters are very similar, except for God uses animate objects and potters use inanimate objects, but there's also very similar. And that's kind of one of the themes of the movie. This kind of just making you reflect on basically what it means to create something almost.
Yes.
You know, and how your relationship with something you create is very different for certain people. You know, and that's kind of gets me into maybe the conclusion of the whole movie in general. Is this is kind of it's a movie almost like if the whole world was just potters and pottery, and like you were making a movie about their relationship.
Yeah, honestly, damn, yeah.
And you get almost like the stories from the pottery, you know, like one of the best. I don't know if you guys remember these shots, but the shots of like one of the dreams where there's like these two guys wearing like, you know, the red and yellow turban, and you get like the shadows, and then they say like they're two potters from the past or something.
Yes,
Yes,
I do remember this. Yeah,
And then, they're two like, and then it cuts to a figure after the scene. It cuts to just two figures of them, like in figure form. Like that's what their story was almost. And that's why you have to watch it over and over again because you never know which one he's doing first. Like, is he showing the real figures and then cutting to the story? Is he doing the story first and then cutting to the figures? You know?
Yeah, he was channeling his Kung Fu Panda vibes. You know? Do you remember the
Kung
opening?
Fu
You
Panda.
have to explain
I don't know how I was.
Do you remember the opening?
Kung Fu Panda.
The opening of Kung Fu Panda is like is the
I know. I love that.
They cut to the figurines.
Okay.
Bro,
Damn.
Bro.
All right. We might have to do a new version.
Big brain.
Mani Kaul influence movie.
Okay. Kung Fu. I'm good with that. You know. Tune in next week. No.
Okay, before I read that Mani Kaul quote and then maybe close with Vertov, is there anything else that sticks out to you about this movie? That
Well, there's one scene that one of my favorite pottery making scenes is when the girl is scribbling, making the zigzags on the pot.
Dude, I have a video of that saved.
Oh, you really?
I've almost tweeted it.
Oh my gosh.
I'll tweet it now.
Yeah, it's just yeah.
I just noticed that. I even pointed that
God.
out when I was watching it with Dustin and Richie. It was like, damn, because like the way he shows it only shows their hands.
Yeah.
And he like it's like he's not even looking at it.
Oh my
So
god.
he's like drawing the lines perfectly, spinning the
Yeah,
thing,
spinning
and,
and
then
just
drawing
going-
it.
it's just
like,
perfect,
It's
like-
like he knows exactly. You know, he's done it so many times basically.
Yeah.
There's so many little moments like that.
Yeah.
Like there's like almost like 2 to 3 minute scene of just this woman singing while she's like working with the clay, and just amazing. You know, it's like he just spends so much time on. Just,
I could watch pottery making like stuff for just hours.
I really feel
days,
like,
honestly. Like,
there's something about the spinning that's really rhythmic. You know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Poetic. Yes.
Yeah.
The last thing I would say is like so what we talked about with Vertov this entire time is how he changes your perspective, and that's what this movie it does for me. And what like like this is so obvious, I feel like, but we don't think about it, at least here in America, I feel like, because we've only been around for like 300 years. But stuff like this, like if you could think about what this stuff could tell you, like that's what basically Mani Kaul's telling you. Like these pots have seen thousands of years
Yes,
of
exactly,
history,
yes.
and what could they tell you? And that's basically what
a
he's
lot
trying
of
to do.
these
He's changing
methods
your
are still the same.
perspective. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or indifferent in their own ways.
Yeah.
Still,
You
right?
could say he gives the clay a mind.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
the mind of clay.
Yes.
I think
yes.
it's
Clay a mind.
But
Makes sense.
No, but just that changing perspective. Like, you're changing your perspective on something, making you think of something
Yes.
from a new perspective.
And that's really
Yeah.
important to him, dude.
Yeah.
Yes, you should. Yes, he wants you to reflect on things, right?
Yeah.
Not just to contemplate on them, to experience them, right?
Yeah.
Not just to be like. And that kind of leads me to this quote I was saving for the end, and you'll see what I mean when I read it. But because it's the reason why he's one of my favorite directors of all time, and that we'll probably do a series of him at some point. And I obviously picked up number 1 on our.
We might need to re-review Mind of Clay then too.
That's why I almost felt bad because I was like, I think this is my favorite Mani Kaul movie. But maybe
you put on
maybe
your new Sight and Sound ballad.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
But he has enough. We could do other ones. Yeah, but it's almost Okay, let me read this quote, and then we can end it. So, quote: I find the documentary form very interesting, and within it, the poetic documentary. The way my Drupad, Siddheshwari, Montimanas, all of which you might call documentaries, but it would be inaccurate because they should be referred to as poems. In my own way, I have tried to bring poetry, documentary, and fiction together. We could call it nonlinear narrative. I have a great disdain for the linear narrative that exists, even if it is complex, even if there are many characters, even if it has a large canvas. But if the spine is linear narrative, and if I remove that and the entire thing falls apart like a pack of cards, then there's no point. I think there's a bug in your mind that demands it should start from here and finish there. It's the bug of linear narrative.
It's the book of
Like,
linear
I mean,
narrative.
I'm sure you guys remember a lot of these Vertov quotes I've read in the past,
Yeah.
in these last episodes, where he's basically said very similar things, right? Like,
Yeah.
the bug. There's this bug and this bug in your mind of linear narrative. I just love that. But yeah, that kind of thinking is why you can get to the point where Mani Kaul can make a movie like this,
Yes.
right? Like, because even if you go to a film class now, one of the first things they'll teach you is look how important the script is, or like look how important the 3-act structure is. It's like a proven thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's still true. Like, people watch movies being like, oh, I like the first act, not the third act, or it's like
The third act dragged.
or
the second act dragged.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, whatever it may be. But it's like you can't even say anything like that about this movie. There's no acts in this movie,
definitely.
right? The way it's connected is like
It flows.
yes, it
very
flows.
well.
Yes, and that's honestly a perfect word for Vertov, Marker, and Mani Kaul.
Yeah.
All their movies flow,
Definitely.
right? They have a very rhythmic. They're very rhythmic,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And that's because they're not just attached to just telling a story. They're trying to do something different with it, with what film can be. And so, that's basically. Okay, I have to read at least one more Vertov quote before we end.
I respect that.
And yeah. I mean, I have a lot, so no, but I'll just stick to one.
Also,
And
Vertov's still in the top 10 of the Sight and Sound 2022.
Yes,
I mean,
okay,
hell yeah,
let's
hell
go.
yeah, hell yeah.
Oh yeah, and I was going to mention, because this reminds me though, before I actually end then, in the Jeremy Hicks book, he talks about how basically for all Vertov's life and a little bit after, Vertov's most popular movie by far was 3 Songs of Lenin.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I understand.
And-
That's one of my. I think that's my second favorite. so.
Okay, yeah, but for a lot of reasons. Stalin obviously was a more quote unquote propaganda or like normal movie. I mean,
Yeah.
for Vertov anyway.
Lenin.
Or no, but at least Stalin would like that.
Oh,
kind
yeah,
of movie,
yeah,
more
yeah.
than the more experimental stuff earlier
Yeah.
he did.
he's
But that's
a star
why.
of it.
But I'm like saying that's why with film you never know what's going to be the most popular movie for someone, right? And obviously this is related to Science Sound. Like movies fall and drop all the time in history. Like nothing's very stable. Like. And that's why it's weird. Like, I don't think Vertov, by the time he died, he definitely never would have thought Man with the Movie Camera would become his most popular. Like, he even talks about how Vertov, and when he was writing his his writings towards the end, when he was writing something about all his movies, he left out Man with the Movie Camera.
Oh, really?
Just because he knew how much backlash it would have got if he had wrote about it, because that's how much it already had become backlash against it, basically. And that's what makes all these film forms cool, right? Like, they outlive their quote-unquote real-body directors,
Yeah.
and the directors live on through the quote-unquote films. So, okay, but yeah, let me read this quote. This is from So Vertov wrote this kind of manifesto in 1922 with his brother and with his wife, too. And I'll just read it, and I think it's a good way to end. So, quote, "We are cleansing kinochestvo foreign matter of music, literature, and theater. We seek our own rhythm, one lifted from nowhere else, and we find in the movement of things. We invite you to flee the sweet embraces of the romance, the poison of the psychological novel, the clutches of the theater of adultery, to turn your back on music, to flee out into the open, into 4 dimensions, 3+ time, in search of our own material, our meter and rhythm. I just love that. Like,
Yeah.
and obviously, like, maybe the words are too strong because obviously he has musical elements in him, right?
Yes.
He has all these elements, but really he's trying to create his own thing first and foremost, right? A Vertov film, right? And so that's kind of what I think we can get out of Vertov.
Well, at least I don't think he's like bashing music in that.
No, he's not either. No.
I think he's saying like film is a 4-dimensional medium.
Yes.
That's why he's
3+
that's
time.
definitely- Yeah, 3+ time.
Yeah. So yeah, do you guys have any last words or? Yeah,
Fantastic.
fantastic. No, we'll just introduce next week then.
We're gonna lose all of our cred here. No, I'm just kidding.
Maybe we'll
Jump-
build some new credit in some different ways.
Yeah.
So okay, what are we calling this episode? Just bad films, bad movies.
Bad movies.
But
Pick
really
a,
what
pick
we're-
a bad movie.
But what we're talking but really we'll just call it bad movies.
Yeah, that's fair.
And really why I want to do this is we're going to talk about what's the difference between a good bad movie and a bad movie.
Yes.
Yes. And then so for
It'll
the
make
two
sense.
movies, it'll make sense. So for the two movies we're doing is Monster Trucks that came out in 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is our good bad movie. No,
This
And we're kind of taking a leap of faith here because we've never seen it.
It better not actually be
We're
good.
just,
No, I'm
we're
just
just
kidding.
assuming it's bad, but it's
It
probably
definitely
bad.
is
It's gotta-
bad.
We could
and
have
we're
some
picking it
debates
because it was
here.
one of the biggest bombs in box office history too.
Yeah.
Like lost over $100 million. Just
it looks terrible.
Yeah, it
so,
looks-
yeah.
Atrocious.
And so, but the good bad movie is Troll 2
Yes.
or Trolls 2.
Troll 2.
Oh, it's okay, Troll 2.
Troll
So
2.
yes.
Troll 2.
I'm really excited to rewatch this.
No,
you
Troll
know.
2 is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Love that. Love So the one of the best trash movies ever made. So.
And I think Vertov would have liked Troll 2.
Yes. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This
More
is-
on that later. No.
Yeah, more on that later. More on that next week. Yeah.
We're continuing the Vertov series.
With Monster Truck and Troll 2.
But yeah, no, I'm excited to do this. It'll be a good change of pace. But yeah, until next time, I hope to see you floating through the clouds.